This is the Behind the Line podcast, coming to you from the crazy, chaotic lines of the Pacific Northwest. And this is Pacific Northwest Headline News. Shall not be infringed. A seemingly simple little statement. A right given to Americans. Well, Washington Governor Inslee and Washington State Attorney General Bob Ferguson don't feel like you have those rights. Yesterday, they announced 2 new bills for gun control in the state of Washington. At a press event in Tukwila, Attorney General Bob Ferguson and Governor Jay Inslee announced they will jointly request 2 upcoming common sense public safety measures for the upcoming legislative session. One renews the call for a ban on the sale of military-style assault weapons. A second new proposal will ensure that gun manufacturers and dealers, like other purveyors of dangerous goods, must take reasonable steps to prevent their products from getting into the hands of dangerous individuals. Let me ask you something. Do bars, are they held responsible for all the many DUI accidents that happen? Are grocery stores that sell beer, are liquor stores, state liquor stores, mind you, that sell hard alcohol to people, held responsible for those dangerous goods? Are car dealers held responsible for selling those dangerous cars that go out and cause hundreds of accidents? Hundreds of fatality accidents every year in the state? No, they're not. The Firearm Industry Responsibility and Gun Violence Victims Access to Justice Act, good Lord, ensures that firearms manufacturers and sellers will face liability if they fail to establish, implement, and enforce reasonable controls in the manufacture, sale, distribution, and marketing of firearms. The bill ensures that victims have access to justice, in other words, they can sue, when the firearms industry fails to keep firearms out of the hands of dangerous individuals. How are they supposed to do that? There's already background checks in place. If the government is not doing its job with the information it provides for background checks, what more can they do? Are these businesses supposed to hire private investigators to investigate each person that wants to buy a gun? This falls back to government not doing its job in 98% of these shootings, where they were aware of the person, knew the person had mental instability, knew that this person has made threats, and did nothing about it. You see it every time in the news when there's a mass shooting. Oh, we knew about this and this and this, but we didn't do anything, or we dropped the ball, or whatever. The bill is sponsored by Senator Jamie Pedersen, a Democrat in Seattle, and Representative David Hackney, a Democrat in Tukwila. The second bill, sponsored by Senator Patty Kadurer, Democrat, Bellevue, and Representative Strom Pedersen, Democrat, Edmonds, renews Ferguson's call for a ban on the sale, manufacture, or importation of military-style assault weapons. This is the second time Governor Inslee has joined Ferguson to call for a ban on the sale of assault weapons. 2 different statewide polls in the last year show that Washingtonians overwhelmingly support banning assault weapons. Oh, yeah? A July poll sponsored by the Seattle Times, and King 5, the University of Washington Center for an Informed Public, and Washington State University's Murrow College of Communication found that more than 60% of Washingtonians, the ones they polled anyway, support a ban on assault weapons in the state. More Washingtonians supported a ban than opposed it on both sides of the Cascades, the poll found. Like I said, of the people that they polled. A poll released in June, performed by Public Policy Polling for the Northwest Progressive Institute. All these liberal organizations are doing the polling, so that tells you who they talk to. similarly found that 56% of Washington voters support a ban on the sale of assault weapons. In the last decade, Washington state voters have overwhelmingly backed common sense firearms safety laws proposed as statewide initiatives. Since 2014, voters have approved initiatives closing background check loopholes, creating extreme risk protection orders, and raising the age to purchase and mandating enhanced background checks for semi-automatic rifles, as well as creating safe storage standards. Yes, punishing the law-abiding people. You know, it's their fault if somebody breaks into... It's your fault if somebody breaks into your house and steals your gun because you didn't have it locked in a safe where you can't get to it if you need it. It's not the criminal's fault for breaking into your house. My front door is the lock of my gun safe. The only people that belong in my house are my family, who are mentally sound and aren't going to go out and shoot anybody. So if somebody else breaks into my safe, my house, and steals my weapon, then that is the criminal's fault, not mine. But of course, criminals don't get punished in this state. These policies will save lives and ensure that the gun industry faces real consequences for irresponsible sales and marketing practices, Ferguson said. It's time to act. I'm proud to stand alongside Attorney General Bob Ferguson once again on this issue, Governor Inslee said. I am sick and tired of the drumbeat of headlines announcing devastating losses of life due to gun violence. I want kids safe at school. I want crowds safe at concerts. I want police safe on the job. Well, we live in a time where there should be security at schools and at concerts, and the job of a police officer is dangerous, and even if you ban these things, you're not taking them out of the hands of criminals, bud. This is the fallacy that goes with all these laws, is that somehow this is stopping criminals from getting weapons. I was a cop for 9 years, fugitive recovery for 16. I've spent most of my adult life dealing with criminals. I've worked in jails. I've worked in juvenile centers. I can tell you that these laws don't stop criminals from getting guns. They stop law-abiding citizens from getting guns. They'll do nothing to keep the hands out of criminals and gang members or the mentally ill. If somebody's made up their mind, they're going to find a way, regardless of your law. They're already going to break the law by committing the act. So they don't care about breaking the law to get the weapon to commit the crime. Our state can and should hold irresponsible gun dealers and manufacturers civilly liable for the harms their products cause, Senator Pedersen said. We have taken this approach for decades with automobiles. Oh, no, you haven't. Pharmaceuticals, again, no. Toxic building materials and other dangerous products, dramatically improving public safety. Pharmaceutical companies that can't be touched. Okay, guy. All businesses should be held accountable for the harm that they cause, both intentional harm, like flooding the market with more firearms that can be reasonably sold by licensed dealers, or unintentional harm caused by irresponsible business practices, Representative Hackney said. When are we going to start holding the politicians responsible for the harm they cause by passing stupid-ass laws that create more harm by allowing police officers or stopping police officers from doing their jobs? When are the politicians going to be held responsible? They're so concerned about businesses being held responsible for the harm they cause. What about the endless amounts of public safety and harm that politicians and liberal prosecutors' offices cause by not doing their jobs, by making it easier for criminals to commit crimes? I want to see politicians be held responsible. We're done coddling the gun lobby, and we can't sit around and wait for action on the national scale, Senator Cooter said. In Washington state, we can stand up to special interest groups that would see guns in the hands of teenagers and children. Yes, there's so many special interest groups that want guns in the hands of teenagers and children. It's disingenuous and wrong when the gun lobby and advocates for weapons of war, nobody uses AR-15s in war, guy. Nobody. Say that we need guns everywhere. I don't think anybody says that either. They say an increase in accessibility will solve the nationwide increase in crime, but it won't, and it hasn't. Just last year, we saw a jump in gun-related crimes across our state and country, even in Republican-controlled states, which they have yet to speak out on. I've spoken to students. They want adults to be adults, and they are sick and tired of being used as target practice. I don't blame them. Kids and students feeling unsafe in their own classrooms is an absolute moral failing of this country. I won't stand idly by while that happens. It has become a grim duty for elected officials reacting to the news of yet another mass shooting, Representative Pedersen said. Whether in Texas or Colorado or Mukilteo, the needless violence and loss of life do not become easier to bear or less harmful to the soul of our nation. We must do more than offer condolences and vague promises of action. We know that assault weapons make mass shootings more deadly. We know that they are the weapon of choice for mass shooters. Most of the mass shootings I've seen, the weapon of choice has been pistols. But okay, guy. Yeah, they banned the large capacity magazines because that's going to help. You know, you can't reload or anything. These weapons of war have no place. Again, nobody's using a semi-automatic AR-15 in war. Nobody. They are not weapons of war. They have no place in our communities or on our streets. It's time for the legislature to take decisive action and ban the sale and distribution of these killing machines. This will not solve gun violence, but it will unequivocally save lives, really. And that is the North Star that should guide us. These politicians are nuts. They've worked behind their little office door for so many years. They're out of touch. They have no idea what's going on the streets. It's ridiculous. This is just more ridiculousness from our Democrats in the state of Washington. This isn't going to solve the problem. They better get to the root of the problem, starting with kids in school. Counseling, mental health. Maybe they should focus on mental health because all of these people who commit these mass shootings are mentally deranged. But nobody wants to ever talk about that or what can be done about the mental health problem. It is just a constant barrage in this state of new laws, rules, regulations, and taxes. That's it. That's all these politicians are good for, is taking your money, putting more rules and regulations and laws on you in order to keep you, quote-unquote, safe, because they think they know what's best for you. You can't override the Constitution. Shall not be infringed. And some breaking news for Wednesday, December 21st. Joe Kent, Republican Democrat for District 3 in Washington, has conceded to Democrat Marie Gluesenkamp-Perez after the recount, and he failed to come up with more votes in the recount. Very unfortunate. A district that has always been Republican, pretty much, somehow flips to some virtually unknown chick. Okay. Republicans in the state need to take a serious look at who they're putting up as candidates and how they support those candidates and promote those candidates. Absolutely ridiculous that we would lose District 3. And like so many other cities around the country, Democrat cities, the Olympia Police Department in Olympia, Washington has announced that They have gained approval for a gun buyback program. The council earmarked $15,000 for the program, but the buyback part of the deal was non-existent until now. On Tuesday, Allen is the chief of police, spoke to the council again asking for approval of a resolution authorizing the program. The council unanimously approved the resolution that allows the department to use the $15,000 to buy gift cards for those who give up their firearms. Those who participate in the program will receive a prepaid Visa gift card with $200 on it for each firearm surrendered. Allen said that the firearms don't even have to be in working order. He said about 6 have been turned in since August. So for just $200, you can give up your ability to protect yourself. You are a fool if you take a $200 gift card in exchange for your ability to protect your own life or that of your family. I mean, if you have guns that are broke, then by all means, go make $200, but guns that are broke and can't be fixed, but to sell out your ability to protect your own life for $200, there's nothing else that needs to be said. It's sickening. Everett, Washington, also doing the same thing. Don't fall for these little tricks for a temporarily little small amount of money. If you have firearms, keep them. You're going to need them. So here's more ridiculousness in the state of Washington. As crime spikes all across the state, and we have already got all these issues with these laws politicians have passed to limit what cops can even do to protect us, and trying to keep people from going to jail and all this other crazy carnival crap that they're doing. A group of advocates and families who've lost loved ones to police violence want to end traffic stops for things like expired tabs and broken taillights. Washington Coalition for Police Accountability recently announced its priorities for 2023, which included ending low-level traffic stops. The coalition argues that these types of safety stops, which in some cases end tragically, disproportionately affect communities of color and low-income drivers. Yes, it's always about race, isn't it? This is so untrue. I was a cop for 9 years. I'll tell you that most of the people driving around with these problems on their vehicles were white people. They were white drug people. The Olympian newspaper reports that one bill proposed by Senator Joe Nguyen of Seattle aims to cease low-level traffic stop. The bill would also create grant money for cities, tribes, and nonprofits. The grant funds would be slated for car repairs that could lead to these types of minor traffic stops. Yes, the government now will pay to have your car fixed. Well, I'm sorry. No, the working people of Washington will pay to have your car fixed, because, yes, we need to have more of our money going to these other people that don't pay for anything. The WPCA is also calling for an independent prosecutor to make charging decisions when it comes to police use of deadly force. Another bill proposed by Representative Mai Ling Tai of Bellevue would remove qualified immunity for officers who violate a person's state civil rights. This is just what we need, isn't it? More freedom for criminals. I can't tell you how many times a misdemeanor or infraction type of traffic stop led to something bigger. They almost always do. Not to mention the fact that some of these safety violations could save somebody's life on the road. But again, they don't care about you. They care about criminals. They care about making sure criminals have more rights than you do. Seemingly. They've already made it to where cops can't chase stolen cars, and we have a record number of stolen cars in the state this year, and I think we lead the country for stolen cars. or we're up in the top 5 anyway. Crime is through the roof. You know, cops are already hampered in their ability to do their job greatly because of recent legislation passed by Democrats, and now here's some more. Here's some more ways that people can go out and hurt you. You know, and as far as prosecuting bad cops, yes, absolutely prosecute the bad police. And it's funny because I messaged these people to tell them that people are sick and tired of criminals of the state being soft on crime. And their response to me was something about prosecuting these criminals. And, you know, am I supportive of that? Completely deflected the question about being soft on crime. Of course, when I responded to them and said, yeah, absolutely prosecute the bad cops, no further response after that. I mean, people, we're just sick of this. Sick and tired of this soft on crime and criminal approach that goes on in the state of Washington. Enough is enough. Governor Inslee is proposing billions of dollars in housing for the next 2 years, including an effort to quickly build thousands of housing units that would require the okay from Washington voters. The governor's proposed budget would spend $70 billion over 2 years, starting in July 2023. That figure represents a roughly 12% proposed increase in spending from the current budget. The budget proposal also reflects other focus areas, including behavioral health, the environment, and public safety, as lawmakers head into the 2023 session. Lawmakers will meet in Olympia starting January 9th and will write and pass the budget, which requires the governor's signature. Washington continues to grapple with the economic fallout from the COVID-19 pandemic, and Inslee's proposal describes the economic context as creating a mixed bag of good and bad fiscal news, in which job losses have been recovered, but inflation is stressing consumers and driving up state government costs. The governor hasn't proposed any new tax increases, but the budget reflects new sources of funding, taxes, recently passed by lawmakers, a capital gains tax, and revenues raised by a cap and invest program to curb greenhouse gas emissions. Capital gains tax faces a legal challenge, and the Washington Supreme Court in January will hear oral arguments on that case. To address the growing lack of affordable housing and number of people experiencing homelessness, Inslee is proposing the state raise $4 billion by issuing bonds outside the state's debt limit. If lawmakers okay the referendum and voters approve it next November, the money would be spent on emergency supportive housing for unhoused people, affordable housing units, and helping low-income first-time homebuyers with down payments and closing costs. I'm sorry, but no. The additional money would pay for about 5,300 housing units between 2023 and 2025, and 19,000 in the following 6 years, according to the proposal. This article says nearly 13,000 people are living unsheltered throughout Washington state. That is absolute garbage lie. There's close to 14,000 people homeless in Seattle. The amount of money the state spends on this stuff, and the fact is, the amount of money they've spent in Seattle every year has gone up and up and up, and the homeless problem continues to go up and up and up. So throwing money at this problem does not solve it. I don't know how they haven't figured this out yet. And my only guess is that this money is getting squirreled through some back door somewhere, and somebody's pocketing and making a lot of money off this homeless problem. Because there's been no results. There's been no change. Nothing has gotten better, and yet hundreds of millions of dollars being spent on it. $70 billion of our tax money? Where are they going to get that from? I guarantee you there'll be some new taxes that come up for this. They have to raise it somehow. We pay enough in taxes in this state. this stuff, I'm surprised this is even going to be up for a vote of the people, honestly. Usually these things get passed without us having any say-so at all, which is also absolutely ridiculous. We should be voting on any type of tax that comes into effect. Well, Oregon is also going through their own little pains with these new gun laws that have gone into effect there. Measure 114, which is currently on hold but could still pass. It was passed by voters tied up in court at this time, but law enforcement officers are scrambling to figure out whether they will be able to legally carry their service weapons while off duty under the state's new gun control law. Oregon Measure 114, which narrowly passed in November with 50.7% of the votes, requires a permit to purchase a firearm, bans the sale, transfer, or manufacture of magazines capable of holding more than 10 rounds, and requires a background check prior to the sale or transfer of any firearm, the Oregonian reported. Eugene Police Department Chief Chris Skinner said it's unclear how the law applies to current law enforcement officers. It's not clear how existing certified public safety professionals are treated under this ballot measure, Chief Skinner told Fox News. Both the purchase of weapons and the possession of magazines in excess of 10 rounds, which all of our duty weapons have that. Oregon State Sheriff's Association Executive Director Jason Myers said in a statement to the court that the measure establishes requirements and perimeters that are impossible to meet at this time. Every person, including law enforcement officers wishing to obtain a permit, will first have to complete training that does not yet exist. Oh, isn't that typical of the Democrat plan? Put something into effect with no way to make it work. It's just typical. The training programs currently in place in Oregon fall short of satisfying all the requirements set forth in Measure 114, according to law enforcement officials. Myers said that at present, no one in Oregon will be able to certify that they have received training on each of these very specific subjects. There are exceptions to the 10-round magazine limit for law enforcement officers and members of the military, but those exceptions apply only for authorized use by that entity related to the official duties of the entity, according to the measure. As a result, it's unclear whether police officers will be able to legally carry service weapons containing magazines capable of holding more than 10 rounds while off-duty. What does that mean for our off-duty officers that are often asked to, and in some cases by policy, required to be armed off-duty as well? Chief Skinner asked during his interview with Fox News. There's a lot of those unanswered questions we're hoping to get some clarity around. But you won't, because these idiots who write these laws don't think about this stuff. They don't understand this stuff. It's just some dumb politician sitting in his office listening to some other idiot who's never been a cop or doesn't really think about these things. And again, Democrats love to come up with these big ideas with no way to implement them or make them actually work, or without any of the infrastructure in place to make it work or happen. And here is a perfect example. And again, public safety, they don't care. They don't care about your safety. They don't want you to be able to protect yourself. And again, all the rights go to the criminals. The tax-paying citizen that's just trying to live their life and do good just keeps getting all this crap heaped on top of them, taxes and regulations and laws and rules and do this and do that. Hand over your paycheck. This whole West Coast, left coast, insane. They want you on the government teat for everything. Well, I'll tell you, we're going to get nowhere with conservative politicians like this. A Republican state senator who once led Oregon's GOP party and who rallied against pandemic safety measures, Democratic senators, and even members of his own party has abruptly resigned as a lawmaker, and so ends, at least for now, the stormy political career of Senator Dallas Hurd. a lawmaker from rural southwest Oregon who said Thursday that his resignation is effective on January 1st in the middle of his 4-year term. Hurd has publicly called fellow lawmakers fools and was once escorted from the Oregon State Senate floor for refusing to wear a mask. He said that he would have worn a mask if asked, but that he objected to being ordered to wear one. Republicans' disappointing results in the November election may have factored into Hurd's decision, though he said that he is leaving because he wants to dedicate his time to his children. During a demonstration by supporters of former President Donald Trump outside the Oregon State Capitol on January 6, 2021, Hurd pointed at the building and shouted through a megaphone, "Don't be violent, take action, trust in God, and take down these fools in 2022. But in November, Democratic candidate and former House Speaker Tina Kotek beat Republican candidate Christine Drazan by 3.5 percentage points. Democrats also retained control of both the Oregon House and Senate. In his note on Thursday, Hurd expressed disappointment at the low turnout of conservative voters. "We have been losing this state and nation because collectively we are doing almost nothing to fight the good fight," Hurd wrote. "We must do better than this if we hope to stand a chance." In March, Hurd quit as chair of the Oregon Republican Party and said that communist psychological warfare tactics were being used within his own party. Last year, Hurd showed up at a high school in his district intending to give a speech about fundamental individual rights. He was approached by a school resource officer and told to leave. Without sharing specific examples, Hurd said on Thursday that the country as a whole has seen an ever-growing movement of evil rising that is determined to take our children's hearts and minds away from their parents. County commissioners in Hurd's district in southwest Oregon will select a replacement to complete his term, which ends in January 25. Asked for comment on the resignation, Senate Republican leader Tim Knopp's spokesperson forwarded a statement in which Knopp thanked Hurd for his service. Oregon State Representative David Brooks Smith, a Republican from southwest Oregon, said Friday that he wants to succeed Hurd. Hurd has endorsed him in a joint statement. You know, these are the kind of politicians we need to keep in office. You can't quit when it gets hard. If you've chosen to go this route, you know it's going to be hard being a conservative in the left coast. I think it's disappointing that this guy gave up. You gotta fight, like he said. Fight the good fight. You know you're not going to have a lot of support in Washington, Oregon, or California. It's just the way it is. But we can't give up, because he's right about the Republican Party in these 3 states. Many of them are just going along with the program. The only way we're going to turn this around is if we have politicians like this who stay in office and continue to fight for what's right. Well, we all see the writing on the wall with the economy, and what are you doing to protect yourself going forward? Silver and gold historically have always held their value. This is a good way to hedge your financial security in the future. You can go to Silver Gold Bull to buy gold, silver, platinum, and other products with over 286,000 5-star reviews. This is where I get my silver from. Silver is the most popular precious metal to invest in, as the cost per ounce is dramatically lower than other metals. Buying silver online is a smarter, more reliable way to diversify your financial portfolio. Additionally, investing in physical silver and gold are the only assets that are completely free of counterparty risk and have historically held their purchasing power. For more information or to purchase your silver or gold, you can visit my website, behindthelinepodcast.com, and follow the link to silvergoldbull.com. Protect your financial future today. Well, the first act by the new mayor of Los Angeles was to declare a state of emergency. The city council voted to ratify a state of emergency on homelessness, confirming Karen Bass's first official act as mayor of Los Angeles. Council voted 13-0, with Councilman Kevin DeLeon casting a vote even though he was not in the chamber. Bass signed the declaration as a method to unlock tools and powers to make sure we are using every resource possible to address homelessness, claiming that it marked a sea change and monumental shift in the city's approach. Using the emergency order is our ability to fast-track things, Bass said. She added, "My mandate is to move Los Angeles in a new direction with an urgent and strategic approach to solving one of our city's toughest challenges and creating a brighter future for every Angelino." The declaration, which is scheduled to last 6 months, allows Bass to take more aggressive executive actions to confront the crisis, though the City Council will have to sign off on it every 30 days. The setting of a specific time frame allows for actions to be taken to make permanent, necessary structural changes, the declaration reads. Whether to continue the state of emergency will be evaluated by several indicators of progress, including the number of encampments and housing placements, and how much more flexibility city departments are allowed through the declaration. This is a problem in every big city run by Democrats. There are an estimated 41,980 unhoused people in the city of Los Angeles. Bass said she plans to announce a program to address homelessness called Inside Safe in the coming days. The plan, which Bass said will cost under $100 million, wow, what a bargain, will be to use master leasing with motels to place unhoused people. She said her office has been in touch with motel owners near encampments. Have you seen a homeless encampment? Have you seen these tent encampments and what they look like? How these homeless people take care of the area around them? It looks like a bomb went off if you drive past one of these places. There's stuff everywhere, garbage everywhere. They just discard everything everywhere. Even if the city puts out trash cans for them, it looks like a bomb went off. There's, like I said, garbage, graffiti, drug utensils everywhere. This is what motel owners are going to have. You're going to fill all the motels in Los Angeles with homeless people so they can just become drug den, prostitution ring, criminal organization. I mean, this is what goes on in these homeless camps. I'm sorry, it's not just some little family that couldn't pay their rent and now they're on the street. Those people don't live in the encampments if they're on the streets, because encampments are riddled with crime, violence. This again is just more talk, more wasted money, and all you're really doing is hiding the problem. You're just paying for these people to stay in a motel so they're not visible on the street. Meanwhile, they're going to trash these properties that they get into. The city will be on the hook for that damage. And the problem will still exist. They'll just be somewhere else. You should be addressing the drug and mental health problems that plague these people and cause them to be homeless in the first place. They should be opening mental hospitals. And they should be putting them in there against their will, because they need it. These people cannot take care of themselves. This is not something taxpayers should be on the hook for. Thousands of homes and businesses along the Northern California coast remain without power nearly a day after a powerful earthquake, 6.4 magnitude, jolted people awake and shook homes off foundations, injuring at least 12 and leaving many without water. In Fortuna, California, Humboldt County, all the main street businesses were closed at 8 a.m. One sign on a storefront read, "Lord help us, we hope to reopen by Thursday morning." Other signs read, "Danger, stay away from the windows." As of Wednesday morning, Pacific Gas and Electric said only 14,000 customers were without power, down from the original 72,000 who had been affected. The utility said it expected electricity to be fully restored within 24 hours. The earthquake comes nearly a year to the day of another 6 magnitude earthquake in the same area. Sort of odd. But you should take this time to think, are you prepared to deal with an earthquake? Are you prepared to deal with power outages or water disruptions? These are all things that you should be thinking about when something like this happens, and reminds us that at any time a natural disaster can occur. And California, while their weather is not as harsh as many other places in the country, much of the country is looking at a major Arctic cold blast coming over the next few days. And it would be an awful time to be without power or water, to be unable to heat your home or cook food or bathe or wash your hands or drink water. These are all things that you should be thinking about and preparing for, not just some apocalyptic event or financial collapse or any other of the many conspiracy, quote-unquote, theories that are out there. You should be prepared. It's just prudent. It's like having an insurance policy. I've talked about this over and over. Water, food, shelter, a way to keep yourself warm. These are just basic things that you should have on hand at least for a week or two. But the longer the better. The more the better. So think about that seriously. Well, sometimes the courts still get it right, which gives me some hope that things can be turned around, even in California. California judge on Tuesday rejected a new murder trial for that dirtbag POS, Scott Pedersen, nearly 20 years after he was charged with dumping the bodies of his pregnant wife, Lacey, and the unborn child they planned to name Connor into San Francisco Bay on Christmas Eve 2002. Pedersen, 50, alleged the resulting trial that gripped the world was tainted by a rogue juror who lied about her own history of abuse to get on the panel that initially sent him to death row, which is where he should be. Superior Court Judge Anne Christine Masulo found there was not evidence to support the defense claim that juror number 7, Rochelle Neese, committed misconduct during jury selection. She falsified answers on a jury questionnaire where she concealed information about having a restraining order against her partner who was beating her when she was pregnant. And you know what? Those are the kind of people that should be on the jury for some turd like this guy. Pedersen's defense team plans to push forward until he is freed. What kind of POS attorney supports a dude like this? How do you sleep at night knowing you are trying to free a man who killed his wife and unborn child and then threw them in the ocean on Christmas Eve? I don't understand. It boggles the mind. But I'm glad that this judge is going to keep this turd in jail where he belongs. And hopefully that's where he stays. And we shouldn't have to entertain the thought of letting a monster like this back out on the street. We have enough monsters on the streets as it is. We don't need to be letting one out that we know is one of the most heinous people on earth. A federal judge has blocked the state of California from enforcing a gun control scheme that was modeled after controversial Texas abortion law. Talked about this in the past when it was passed by old Governor Gavin Newsom, delivering Democratic Governor Gavin Newsom the exact outcome he wanted. U.S. District Court Judge Roger Benitez of the Southern District of California issued a permanent injunction on Monday against the free-shifting provisions of the state's gun law, which empowers private citizens to bring lawsuits against gun manufacturers, declaring it unconstitutional. It is cynical, it is an abomination, it is outrageous and objectionable. There is no dispute that it raises serious constitutional questions. It is an unprecedented attempt to thwart judicial review, Benitez wrote in his opinion, quoting directly from Newsom's criticisms of the Texas abortion law. The Texas measure makes abortions illegal after a fetal heartbeat can be detected and permits private citizens to sue abortion providers or anyone else who assists in a woman's procurement of abortion for $10,000. This fee-shifting mechanism was designed to protect the 2021 law from judicial review to circumvent the Supreme Court's old abortion precedent in Roe v. Wade. The High Court has since overturned that precedent, permitting states to restrict or liberalize abortion. Newsom called on the California legislature to enact a similar law for guns days after the Supreme Court ruled that the Texas heartbeat law could remain in effect following a legal challenge. California's gun law also creates a private right of action for citizens to sue gun manufacturers who make assault weapons and ghost guns for $10,000. Newsom described the law as virtually identical to the Texas provisions, but Benitez wrote that California's law goes even further. He observed that the gun control statute denies a prevailing plaintiff attorney's fees. Further, Benitez emphasized that only the California measure applies to laws affecting a clearly enumerated constitutional right set forth in our nation's founding documents. Whether these distinctions are enough to save the Texas law fee-shifting provision from judicial scrutiny remains to be seen, Benitez wrote. And although it would be tempting to comment on it, the Texas law is not before this court for determination. The judge's order is likely to set up a showdown at the U.S. Supreme Court, which is the outcome Newsom desired. The governor's office called it hypocritical to block the state's gun law while permitting the Texas abortion measure to stand. Well, Texas is Texas and California is California, bud. Why don't you worry about all the many, many problems that you have in California and not what's going on in Texas? $2035, folks. 2035 is the magic year that the West Coast will suddenly have all the infrastructure in place, all the extra electricity in place for only cars that run on electricity to be sold from that point forward. 2035, Washington, Oregon, and California have all agreed to ban the sales of gasoline-powered vehicles. How will they do it? What is their plan? They don't have one. California already struggling to provide enough electricity for its residents. Washington, Oregon don't so much have this problem, but where is the infrastructure for the cars to be charged? If you drive up and down the I-5 corridor, in all three of these states, where is the charging stations? Where are they going to be located? What land is going to be used? Because pretty much all the land is used up. Are you going to make existing gas stations, pull pumps, and put electric pumps in, electric charging stations in? And if so, this is something that is expensive and takes time, and so you're talking about these gas stations having to eliminate fuel pumps for charging stations. You know, they'll have to begin that process probably at least a year or two before this mandate goes into effect, which means less income for them because those charging stations won't be getting used. People will still be buying gas. How are you going to make this happen? I haven't seen any of these states put up a plan that shows how they're going to provide the infrastructure and the extra electricity for these projects, for this plan. It's just somehow it's going to happen because you spoke it. In Washington, they're even wanting to tear down some of our dams that provide the electricity we use. You're not going to get enough electricity from solar and wind. We've already, this is proven. Are we going to go back to nuclear power? We should go back to nuclear power, but they won't, because that's dirty too. Like so many of the Democrats' hopes and dreams, this is all just fluff and words. There's no plan in place. There's no way to make it happen. We just talk about it because it sounds good. But what are you going to do to actually put this into effect? How are people going to afford to only buy electric cars? They're very expensive. Of course, this isn't going to eliminate gas-powered vehicles. People can still drive those and buy used ones, but I want to know how they're going to make this happen. I want to know where the infrastructure is going to go, how the extra electricity is going to be provided to charge all these cars. And I want these dumbass politicians to explain it to us, instead of just going or being very vague about the whole how it's going to happen, just that it's going to happen. What's going to be the effect on the cost of electricity? Is it going to go up? I can guarantee you the price of gasoline is going to go up because there'll be less people buying it, and the stations will have to raise their prices. The oil companies will have to raise their prices. How is this going to affect our relations with oil companies and the other states? How is this going to affect truck transportation in the state? Because in California, the only semi-trucks allowed in ports, they have to be only 2 years old. They won't allow old trucks to come into the port. So by 2037, you're going to have electric-powered semi-trucks coming in. What have we talked about this? Is there a plan? Is there an exemption for semi-trucks? How many truck drivers can afford to buy an electric semi-truck? Not many, I'm guessing. What will that do to the cost of shipping? What will that do to the amount of time it takes to move shipping containers out of the port of Los Angeles and other California ports? The same rule applies for taxis in the cities. They have to be of a certain year, so I think after a couple more years, after this law goes into effect, you're going to have all the taxis that also have to be electric. What's that going to do to the cost of your taxi ride? Uber has the same rules about how old a car can be that's used for passenger work. So then eventually all the Ubers will have to be electric. What is that going to do to the cost of your Uber ride? It's going to go up. Why does it seem like these Democrats never look at the big picture, or how their little rainbows and unicorns plans are going to affect everything else around us? For listening to the Behind the Line podcast. For more, visit behindthelinepodcast.com. You can also find us on netnewsnetwork.net, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Telegram, Gab, Parler, and Truth Social. Please like, share, and subscribe.